And welcome. I don't know the most appropriate way or the best way to articulate how excited I am about this particular course. This is something that we have kicked around for a long time. It's something that I had resisted for a long time, and it finally has come to be, right? So, you are now beginning the Breakthrough Coaching Certification course, uh, sponsored by, I guess, if you want to call it that, one of our brands, Elite Coaching University. My name is Sean Smith. I think you all know of me, and I'm excited to go through this course, but really excited about who we have in the course. Some of you I know very well, and I'm thrilled to be your guide in this course. I'm also thrilled to know what you're going to add to the conversation and to the group. So I'm excited to learn from you, and I'm excited to get, the benefits of your energy, etc. And I'm also excited to get to know many of you who I don't currently know yet, at least a whole lot of. And yes, Kamari, you are the pioneers for this particular course. And that's a much better word than guinea pig, right? So you are the pioneers for this particular course. This is the first time I've ever done an online coaching certification course. And I'll tell you why. The reason is that I believe that in order for you to be the most efficient breakthrough coach, you've got to experience breakthroughs in action. Like, you've got to be immersed in the environment, and you can't just learn how to do some of the skills that require you to watch them being done. They require you to experience them being done with you, on you. They require you to practice them in other people, and they require you to be in a different environment than where you normally be, right? Because you've got to immerse yourself, you've got to remove yourself from the current environments, immerse yourself in a breakthrough environment, and experience, like, swim in the ocean of what breakthrough coaching is all about. So I've stood on those principles, and it's totally judgmental, and I get it, but I've stood on those principles for a long, long time, mostly because that's how I got into the industry. I went to a certification program for 2 straight weeks, and I'm talking about 14 straight days with no break. And that's what I experienced. And I thought, how could anybody learn these kinds of tools and have this kind of experience without being here in person? So I resisted doing any kind of online certification for a long, long time, until recently I realized, we're just not giving enough people that are in different areas of the world, or couldn't show up for 5 days in a row, or for whatever other reason, they don't know me very well yet, and they don't want to commit to 5 days. There are things that you can absolutely learn that don't require you to be in the 5 day seminar. Now, having said that, and I didn't plan on, like, starting this whole program with a pitch. I'm just responding to the comment that you made, Kamari. But having said that, we will still continue to do these 5 day seminars, and that is an option for you all to continue. But this has effectively become part one of the breakthrough coaching process, right? And we're really excited about it. So as I put the course together, and if you haven't seen the manual, this is a beast of a manual. I mean, there's 101 pages in this manual. So we're going to go through a ton of content. I want this to be a very powerful, transformative, exhaustive coaching program on some level. Not exhaustive in the sense that you don't, have anything else to learn afterwards, but exhausting on some level too. Not in a negative sense, but you've really got to dive all in, right? With pretty much anything that you commit to. So that's one of my intentions for this program, and that's why I'm really excited to deliver a lot of this online. And that's the reason that we've put it together the way we have put it together. So yes, I am pumped up for all of you. And one of the things that I'll probably get to, but I'll just say it right now. I'm sorry, I'm going through the chat box here, and I'm trying to address the ones that are pertinent to the whole crowd. I am a teacher at heart, and so if you have questions about the content, you can go ahead and ask me the questions. With the chat box, unfortunately, you all can't see your own comments. At least I don't believe you can. I was told that you can't unless the system has changed since. So since you can't see your own comments, then what I would suggest you do is if you have comments that you want to make to the whole crowd, do it on the Facebook page. And if you have comments that you want to share, like ahas that you have and realizations, any of that kind of interaction that's more for the group, I would prefer you do it on the Facebook page. And then number one, it also makes me it makes me able to handle the comments a little bit better, because most of the comments are going to be, specific to me, or things that are pertinent questions for the content, of the webinar, etc. So having said all of that, let's get started. I could probably spend a couple hours just just engaging with you all, and that would be super fun. I love doing that, but we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that, at least not right now. So thank you all for attending. I appreciate the energy. I appreciate the excitement that many of you have, not just about this program, but about coaching in general. And that's one of the things that's missing in a lot of people's lives, in the normal things that people are doing, but also in this industry. And one of the principles, I think, or one of the concepts I think is really important, is that you stay connected to your passion, especially if you've been in business for a while. So let me ask this. I don't have a poll for this, so I'm just going to ask you to type in the chat box here, those of you that are online. How long have you been a coach? And I want you to just give me one of three answers, maybe four. Never. If you've not been a coach, you haven't gotten any clients. And when I say how long have you been a coach, let's make this distinction. Do you have any paying clients? If you don't have any paying clients, then put in never, meaning you haven't gotten paid to be a coach yet. That doesn't mean that what you've been doing is insignificant. It's just that your business transactions haven't started yet, right? 0 to 2 years is the second answer. 2 to 5 is the third, or 5 plus. So just type in how long you've been a coach, and I'm going to go through here and just kind of get a sense. Okay, so it looks like about half of you are nevers. About 40% of you are 0 to 2. I see one with a 5 plus. 2 with a 5 plus. Okay, perfect. So I just want to get a sense of who you are. And all of those are great. You're in the right place, because whether you haven't gotten any coaching certifications before, and this is your very first entry into the coaching certification world, then I'm honored. If you've been doing coaching, then these skills will just increase, hopefully, your mastery and give you some different skill sets, etc. And it'll amplify from wherever you are. So number one, you're in the right place. And number two, it just helps me, like with our information and our discussions and the examples that I give, etc., to know who's really on the line. So thank you for all of that. As we go through these webinars, and the first part here of module number one is a little bit of housekeeping. We won't generally take 10 to 15 minutes just saying hi and welcoming people like this and going through, how to operate. Obviously, we'll just get right into the content a little bit sooner. But it's important that you know how this course is laid out and what I want you to do in order to engage and get the most out of this course, right? So we have the handout. The handout is posted in the Facebook page in the Facebook group, and it's under the tab Files. So print out the handout or keep it digitally if you don't want to print it all out. I think it'd be better if you print it out so that you can write notes on it. There's just something a little bit more valuable generally if we have something physical that we can take notes on, and it's easy for our notes to get lost or hidden in our computer, and it's more convenient in the computer. I get it. And usually the more convenient route is not also the more valuable route. So when we are learning and when we are going through personal development, convenience isn't the best thing generally, because personal development requires a disruption of sorts. Sometimes it's a gigantic disruption, sometimes it's a small disruption. But when we disrupt something that we've normally unconsciously been following, then it lets us know this is important for us to pay attention to. So just the very act of doing something that is disruptive to your current patterns will make it easier for you to replace those with better patterns. And too many people operate opposite to that because we live a life of convenience nowadays, especially with the internet, social media, smartphones, all of that stuff is actually not serving our evolution in our behavior a lot of times, because the fundamental principles that are important for us to know and apply to ourselves and with our clients existed well before technology. And so what happens is technology causes us to sometimes skip over the fundamentals. And what's even worse than that, sometimes technology allows us to make it look like we have actually made a change that we haven't made. And I'll give you a little bit of an analogy here. I grew up, not grew up, but in my earlier years as an adult and when I got into a career, I was spending a lot of time with kids. I was a probation officer for a couple years. Then I was a school teacher for a couple years, or for about 7 years actually. And when I started coaching and training, I really wanted to speak to youth. And so I studied youth a lot and had discussions around young kids a lot. And one of the things that I believe is that because of our current society, because of technology and because of the media, our kids appear to be evolving quicker than they actually are. Because, what a PG movie used to be is now like, I don't even know what the movie ratings are, but like what used to be a rated R is now PG-13, right? And what used to be PG is now like anybody can watch this stuff. And so our kids are being exposed to sex and drugs and violence and murders, in their cartoons, right? And in their games. And so they're being exposed to much more mature conversations and situations. But emotionally, I do not believe that technology has sped up evolution. I don't believe that technology or media has sped up the emotional evolution of a human being. So what that means is we have 13-year-olds who internally, and in fact, I think it might slow it down. So we have 13-year-olds who on the outside might look like, because they speak like, because they've been exposed to conditions and situations like they're a 15-year-old, but internally they've got the emotional evolution of an 11-year-old, and that gap is really dangerous. Now, I think that gap shows up in all forms of human development and all forms of behavior. So just because we can do things conveniently or we can do things faster, that doesn't mean it's better. I did a webinar last night and I said that one of the things I taught is fast without foundation is dangerous. Fast without foundation is dangerous. And we are all here to provide human transformation on some level, right? We're all here to provide transformation on some level. And we can't rush that. In fact, if we don't rush it, it'll go faster. Because when you make the shifts at the foundational level, and that's the whole purpose of neurotransformation, which we'll get into, When you make the changes at the foundational level, then you can actually move things a lot quicker. And more importantly than that, the changes will be sustainable. So I want you to stay committed to long-term, sustainable, real change in people, yourself included. And that's what I fundamentally believe, because that's what I've experienced in this industry in many ways, whether it's building a business or actually doing the foundational belief work, right? I've experienced that foundation is faster than convenience. Oh, that's a good one. I never said that. Foundation is actually faster than convenience, even though in the beginning, convenience has us tricked. It makes us think that it can help us go faster, but it actually ends up slowing us down, or it helps us build something fast, but without the foundation at some point in time, it's all going to come crashing down. So those are some of my philosophies that we'll get into. And remember, we got a lot to cover in this whole course. I don't want you to feel frustrated with anything that happens, whether you miss a live call or you don't really understand a certain concept or you fall a little bit behind in any of the assignments that I might give. I don't want you to judge the process, because your judgment of the process will make the process more problematic. If you judge the process, you're not helping yourself. So just enjoy, dive in, put your seatbelts on. We got a long journey ahead of us. So this is the Module 1 outline. We're going to get into these 6 things in the handout, and I'm going to share with you all the slides. And basically the slides, for the most part, are the same as the handout. So you can watch the webinar slides, you can take notes on the handout, you can do one and then watch the replay and do the other later, or whatever works best for you in the way that you learn. But in order to maximize this course, let me give you a few pointers. The first thing I want you to do is get a partner coach. I would suggest, even though as I say that, most of you probably just went through your mental Rolodex of who you already know in this group and thought, I want her or I want him. Okay, that's cool as a thought, and that's convenience. That's a convenient, comfortable thought because you already know that person. Don't do this course conveniently and comfortably, because then you'll miss something that you were meant to get. So my invitation to you is find a partner coach that you don't currently know and develop a relationship. Now, you're going to go through this course as much as possible with this partner coach. That means that sometimes you'll be on the phone doing exercises with each other. Sometimes you'll just be texting or emailing back and forth, helping each other stay accountable, right? But it's important to have some accountability and one-on-one individual support to maximize this course. Now, the things I'm going to tell you on this slide right here are the things that I know to be true about how people maximize the consumption and the retainment. I don't even know if that's a word, but how to maximize the consumption of learning and how to retain the learning in these online courses. So my suggestion to you is to ignore these at your own peril, right? If you ignore these things, these are not my ego. It's not like I'm trying to figure out how can I move all the puppets with my strings? Can I make them get a partner coach? Can I make them do this? Can I make them do that? No, that's not where this is coming from. This is coming from 10 plus years in this industry of taking courses and leading courses and knowing what helps people win and knowing what helps people succeed and consume the information, right? So number one, get a partner coach. And my suggestion is, I see a lot of posts in the group. I don't know if any of you just posted. Yes, some of you are posting. Do you want to be my partner coach? Okay, that's great. That's great. Then it's better than not posting. It's better than not posting. However, it's still a little passive, right? It's a passive effort. And, it's better than no effort, but it's still a passive effort. And it's totally okay. Like, I'm looking at somebody who just posted, and you got a partner right away. Okay, that's fantastic. It's okay if you posted and you got yourself a coach that way. What happens a lot of times, though, is, the popular people or the ones that post first end up getting partners. And then you're going to have I'm saying this with love and appreciation. You're going to have the leftovers, right? Now, I say that because I've always been part of the leftovers. I am painfully antisocial, regardless of whether you believe that or not. I'm not antisocial when I'm at events and when I'm speaking, but when I'm not in that environment, I am painfully antisocial and ridiculously high, off the charts introverted. So I am the person where, if there's a group of people and you got to go find a partner, I would be a leftover. I would be a guy who would just turn around and look at the wall and, hope somebody picks me. But if somebody doesn't pick me, then I would just pout about it. And so I'm speaking to my fellow leftovers. And if that label rubs you the wrong way a little bit, then good. It was meant to, I guess. So, to my fellow leftovers, don't just watch from the sidelines, and don't leave it up to somebody else to come get you and ask you to dance. I want you to find somebody in this group that you want to dance with. And that's just an analogy. Don't make that mean anything whatsoever. That you want to dance with in this group. And I want you to reach out to them. You can tag them. You can send them a Facebook message. Now, if you're not friends with them, it'll go into their spam folder. I don't know if you all know that Facebook actually has kind of like a spam folder, and if you're not friends with people, they won't get it directly in their inbox. But because of that, what I'm asking all of you to do is figure out where that spam folder is in Facebook and look, because you might get a message from somebody in this group. But my invitation to my fellow introvert, antisocial, leftover folks is to see how you do life and see if this serves you. Because if you're like me, then the reality is that doesn't serve us all the time. It actually very rarely serves us. And sometimes it's a fear of making a mistake. And sometimes it's our deep desire to play it safe. And sometimes it's our judgment of what it means for other people to just rush out and try to get the attention, right? Whatever it means for you, I just want you to contemplate that. And does that serve you in your life? And for those of you that are the kind of person that would generally go out and ask somebody across the dance floor to dance right away because you're the kind of person that goes after everything that you want, my invitation to you is to delete that post that you might have just made about a partner and just see what it's like doing the opposite. See if that feels uncomfortable to you. Sometimes that's you needing to stay in control, right? And you don't want to allow somebody else to pick you because that means you're not in control. Or sometimes it's you being afraid of actually not being picked, because that could end up being your biggest pain. And in order to not get picked, you're going to do the picking. Maybe it means something else. Maybe it means nothing. I don't know. But my invitation to everyone is to play this particular game, the partner coach game, differently than what's comfortable for you, and just see what comes up. Now, having said that, my mandate, if you will, is to get a partner coach. So if you're standing back on the sidelines, that doesn't mean stay on the sidelines for 2 weeks if nobody comes and chooses you. Maybe it just means for today, and then you feel the discomfort, you kind of contemplate, what does that mean? You catch the messages that are swimming around in your head and the fears or emotions that bubble up. I mean, this little thing right here might bring a lot of emotions to the surface for people. And and if it does, it's probably attached to your I'm not enough story, and I'm not lovable. That's why I pick people, or that's why I wait to get picked and I prove to myself that people don't love me. Like, we're only a quarter of the way into module 1, so we won't get so deep yet, right? But that's where we're heading in this course, and so we'll go there when we need to. And I want you to just be aware Awareness is one of the most critical traits to have in any form of personal development, right? So I want you to have some awareness with this particular process. Yeah, Laura says, I have a hard time believing you are an introvert. I am painfully, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not being dramatic. And most people don't see that in me because most people, that are in this course, they see me on stage or they see me on webinars and stuff like that. Um, but that's me in that role. And it's okay to be whoever you are. So let's go ahead and talk about this for a second, because it's a conversation I've been getting into quite a bit lately, because a lot of us think that in order to succeed, we have to be different than who we are now. Whether it's an introvert extrovert discussion or black, white, or anything related to our physical characteristics, or skinny, fat, grew up in the city, grew up in the country, have a lot of money, don't have a lot of money, linear versus creative, whatever the distinction is, it's kind of like the grass is always greener on the other side concept. Most people have an I'm not enough belief and story going on in their head. One of the sub stories to that is that who I am isn't good enough to succeed. Right? Well, if I had support from my spouse, then I could succeed too. Well, if I had a spouse, then I could succeed too. Well, if I didn't have a spouse, then I could succeed too. Well, if I got into this when I was younger, then I could succeed too. Well, if I got into this when I was a little bit older and I didn't have all these young friends pulling me in different directions, then I could succeed too. There's a blank that follows the word because that has a bullshit justifiable reason as to why we can't win. And sometimes it's really sexy. Sometimes it's really valid and totally bullshit, because it doesn't help you win. So anything that follows, I can't win because, is bullshit. Even if it's true, real, valid, legitimate, bullshit. Because it just perpetuates the first three words, I can't win. So one of the things we have to do with our beliefs is stop searching for evidence for the beliefs that are not serving us. So for a lot of you, maybe this is one of the ways that you're going to expose some of those beliefs that are not serving you, is this whole partner coach kind of thing. And then the last thing I want to say about the introvert versus extrovert thing is, I've noticed that we tend to seek balance in our energetic beings, right? We tend to seek balance. So one of the reasons that I come alive on the stage as much as I do, and the amount of permission that I give myself to go all out on stage, and I'm going to be honest from a neutral standpoint. I'm not saying this with any ego, but if I'm honest, most speakers don't give themselves permission to get naked in front of people, figuratively, right? Most people don't give themselves permission to get vulnerable. Most speakers hold themselves back tremendously. And I'm not saying that I don't hold myself back, but I'm willing to cross lines that a lot of speakers aren't willing to cross. I'm saying that with no judgment. And I think most people would agree. But one of the reasons that I give myself that permission is because of how deep my introvertness is. And so, not that we can measure this, but let's say on a scale of 0 to 10, I'm introverted at a 9. Well, then on a scale of 0 to 10 on stage, I'm going to come out blazing also at a 9. And I think a lot of people just live a little bit more reserved. So maybe they are a 2 out of 10 to the right, and then they're going to be a 2 out of 10 to the left also, because requires balance. This shows up in our behavior patterns a lot. People who abuse other people, whether it's physically, mentally, verbally, sexually, whatever, it's usually a control thing, right? The people that need to control externally do that because they don't have control internally. And I would argue that the same measure of balance shows up there as well. So people who control others violently or control others extremely are internally extremely out of control. Because see, if you are in control internally, you don't have to fool anybody by trying to control externally. But if you are not in control internally, then you got to kind of fool people and just let everybody know that you actually are in control. So you're going to compensate, and it's usually an overcompensation for what's going on internally. But it all comes down to balance, right? So what you'll find is that when you do some of the work on yourself and you get rid of, like, let's say some of the anger that you might be carrying around, let's say your anger on a scale of 0 to 10 is currently an 8. When you project anger outwardly to other people, you probably project it at an 8 also. At least your scale of 0 to 10. It doesn't mean that your 8 is the same as somebody else's 8. But you're generally going to project it to the same degree that you can't control it internally. So we do the work on ourselves and we get rid of some of that anger. We learn how to handle some of that anger. And now you're a 4 on the scale, which means you project to a 4 now also. It's a function of your measure of control that you have inside that determines how much you control externally. And it's not just control, but you'll find that internal and external in many different areas of human behavior have this balance because we seek balance. And sometimes it's the opposite, right? Sometimes the opposite is true, where you might you might notice something externally, and so you create the internal reality to match the external. I mean, usually it's the opposite. It's the internal stuff then creates our external behaviors and patterns and stuff like that. But anyway, so depth. Okay, so here's what I'm present to right now. I've only done one bullet right here on this slide. So let me get to bullet number 2. And I don't think each bullet is going to be a 12-minute bullet. Facebook group, use it. All right, I'm done with that one. That was quick. See, balance. Partner coach was really long. Facebook group was really short. Now we're in balance, right? But I do want to speak to the Facebook group just a little bit. One of the most valuable assets of this program will be the Facebook group. It'll be the community that you are now a part of. You're in a community of people who are also geeks about personal transformation. And so you're going to be able to talk about things in this community that you can't talk about in other communities that you may be around. So you've got to dive into that. This primarily is going to be a community without judgment around how weird you are, right? Because we are all weird. We're all geeks about this kind of work. We're fascinated by it. And because of that, we're actually going to enjoy some of the conversations that other people might make fun of you for. And so for some of you, this might be a community of belonging that you haven't felt before. And I can't wait for you to feel it if that's true for you. For some of you, this might be a community that really listens to you. And sometimes we're going to be giving to the community, and sometimes we're going to be receiving from the community, but I implore you, I request of you, I suggest, I mandate of you, use this Facebook group as much as you possibly can. Now, don't use it to spam people. Don't use it to try to sell your stuff. Don't use it to do anything other than serve the conversation that we're in. Now, that's a big conversation, so a lot of things will apply to neurotransformation and to human development. So if you want to share articles, if you want to share memes that are empowering, if you want to share things that are related to anything you heard me say, all of that is inbounds, right? And I think you all know, you have this moral compass of what it looks like to serve the community and what it looks like to take away from the community. But I want you to use this as much as possible. And if you have a question about the content, I want you to always go to Facebook first. Because if you have a question, somebody else probably has a question. And I would rather the group benefit from the question. And I'm not the only one with a bunch of coaching experience or answers or creativity or innovative ideas in this group. There are plenty of people in the group that are going to answer your questions. And so I don't want the questions to just be directed at me. I will be a participant in the group as well, but use the group for what it can provide to you. Ask questions during the course. I already talked about that. You can ask them during on the chat. I will not be monitoring the Facebook group. I'm not going to be seeing who's posting questions and stuff like that during these webinars in the group. So that's why I said earlier, if you have questions specifically for me during this process about the content, use the chat box on the webinar. Schedule time for this work. We're going quick. These live sessions are going quick. And I don't want that to overwhelm you. Some of you are going to be able to go right, keep up stride for stride and probably want more, and that's fine. And some of you might not be able to fit the time into your busy schedules. That's fine too. Whatever scenario you fit into, schedule time for the course. Now, these calls are generally going to be, I would say, an hour and a half to 2 hours, because it's such engaging conversation, right? And you can tell I'm on slide 3 right now. We're 40 minutes into the first call. I'm on slide 3. And I didn't even do anything with slide 2. I didn't even say anything about it. So these conversations are very engaging to me. It's going to bring the geek out of me. It's going to bring the geek out of a lot of you who are also fascinated and wondering about how this applies to yourself, how it applies to your kids, how it applies to these people that you know, what you can do in this situation, how can you help your clients, how does this apply to you building a business? Like, this kind of information is not just a collection of intellectual knowledge that you're going to put in a vault somewhere, whether it's in your head or on your computer, on a set of notes, on a notepad. This is information that is stimulating. So it's going to stimulate thoughts. It's going to stimulate new ideas. It's going to stimulate questions. It's going to stimulate fears that you didn't even know you had. It's going to stimulate awareness around certain things. That's the nature of this work, these conversations. That's the nature of these webinars, right? Now, just because these webinars are generally going to be an hour and a half to 2 hours long doesn't mean you have to be here for an hour and a half to 2 hours long. And the reason I say that is, if you don't have 2 hours and you only have 15 minutes, jump on for 15 minutes. And I promise you, it will help you build the new muscles. It'll help you stay inside the conversation. It'll help you do what I call keep your plane in the air, which is incredibly important anytime you're building a new pattern. So I don't want you to be the all or nothing kind of person. If I don't have a whole hour and a half to go to the gym, well, I'm not going to go today. It's better to swing by the gym and pop in and do 5 minutes on the treadmill than to not go at all. It's better to just get out of bed and do some push-ups and sit-ups than to not do the full 90-minute training. And so if you can't do it all, that doesn't mean don't do any of it. Stay in the conversation. That's one of the most critical things you can do with this particular work especially. And so schedule that time. You know the times of these webinars. If you're not able to make any of them or certain ones, schedule the time later. When are you going to go through the webinar? When are you going to do the homework? When are you going to actually complete these exercises with the partner coach? Schedule the time, because if you don't schedule the time, then you'll end up like most people who decide, oh, I'll get to that when I have some free time. Now, when was the last time that any of you tripped and fell into free time? And you're like, look at this, free time. Well, I'm just going to go do all those things that I had been putting off into my free time bubble. No, because no matter what we're doing, we're busy 24 hours of the day. And unless we intentionally create time for something, it probably won't be handed to us. And this could be something that many of you look at as one of your own patterns. I'm very aware right now in this moment, it's going to be tough to it's going to be tough for me to keep any of these calls under 2 hours. And it's also going to be tough for me to deliver all this content in only 10 modules because I'm like, oh my God, we got so many conversations to have. Anyway, I'm going to do my best to not withhold anything, but, to be efficient. So what's important is that time is created. Many of you have, and I don't have this as much. I have a little bit of this, but many of you have a really unhealthy relationship with time, and you've got a story that says you don't have time to get things accomplished. And as sexy and real and legitimate as that is, it's also bullshit because you're justifying why you don't have time, and there's no room in there to change anything. You just made this blanket statement, and most of us have a statement like that to prove to ourselves or the world how busy and important we are. Because busy and important people, or important people are busy, and therefore they don't have any time. So even though we don't necessarily enjoy the effect of that story actually strokes our ego a little bit because it makes us think that we're actually busy and we're actually important, when a lot of our busyness is nothing more than just, passing time. So anything that's important to you, you've got to create time for it. Time is created, not found. And we all have the same amount of time every day. I know you all heard some version of that. So schedule time for doing this work. And I already mentioned this a little bit earlier. Don't stress about missing the live calls. Join us when you can. Don't stress about anything. If you do find yourself stressing about something, just notice it, jot it down. I would suggest that you all, I should have put this on the slides. I just thought of it now. I would suggest that you all get a journal. This journal is to capture your thoughts that specifically are triggered by this program. If you have another journal that you write in, I would suggest you don't catch your thoughts in the same journal where you create or write poetry or anything else that you're doing in a journal. I would suggest you do this separately. And this is just observations, right? One of the best things we can do, I mentioned awareness earlier, one of the best things we can do is be aware with no judgment. Like, I notice I'm holding on to stress right now. Okay. You're not chasing the stress. You're not chasing the thought. You're not trying to defend it. You're not falling into the emotional quicksand of what stress does to you. You're just noticing, I'm having stressful thoughts right now. That's interesting. I want you to just be interested in your stories, not committed to them. At least the negative ones that don't serve you, right? Be interested in them, listen to them, capture them, but don't commit to them and don't chase them. That's the distinction, right? So hopefully, one of my true desires in this course is that every single one of you, at some point in time along this process, gets some deep-seated pain triggered for you. That's one of my that's one of my highest intentions for you, is that this course helps you uncover some pain. And if it's like deep childhood pain, then even better. Maybe we should have a contest. Like who who got triggered the deepest, right? And maybe there's like a checklist. Like, did it make you cry? Did it make you sob? Did it make you throw up? All right, ding, ding, ding. So-and-so's the winner because on module number 4, she got triggered so hard that she started crying, sobbing, panting, couldn't breathe, and then vomited. So you win. Now, I'm joking a little bit. Hang on one sec. I'm going to take a sweatshirt off. All right. I was creating a lot of neurological heat. So I'm going to take my sweatshirt off. So I'm joking a little bit, but I say that because if those things happen for you, don't judge them and don't try to suppress them. Don't try to play whack-a-mole with your emotions. That's never the way to handle emotions. That's only the way to stuff them down and let them operate below the surface, which is worse than them operating above the surface and you being able to let them go, right? So don't stress about anything. If you notice any negative thoughts about me, like, oh my God, it's 45 minutes it's 50 minutes into the module now, and Sean's on slide 3. My God, he's a terrible trainer, or I can never do that, or this is stupid, this is amazing, like whatever your judgments are about anything or about somebody else in the course. Like, oh, look at so and so. She posts every single day. What does she want us to just know how smart she is, like the teacher's pet? Any judgment that you have is valuable to become aware of. And so just notice them. All right. What I want to start with, no, Sneha, the live event pain was just the beginning. It was just the invitation. And can you imagine? So Sneha just messaged me because she's referring to a live event that I did, and many of you were at Infinite Receiving several weeks ago. And she's she's referring to, apparently I triggered some pain um, in that live event, and you're welcome for that. It's one of my gifts, especially making women cry is one of the things that I think I've developed a pretty good ability to do. Um, and so so what's awesome is that was my invitation to the course. And you said yes, right? So of course that wasn't enough. There was some desire that you have to go deeper. And of course, that doesn't mean you want more pain, but you want more something, right? And we're going to talk about pain and fear and doubts and all these things throughout the course. Trust me. And I'll be sharing with you stuff that's going on in my life. And, I'm a radically vulnerable open book for the most part. So I'm going to share with you all kinds of things in the course. But pain is one of the things that the human psyche tries to avoid, yet it's generally positive, right? So I now just call them growing pains. If you feel pain, especially emotional pain, it means you're growing. And if you can at least label it growing pains, then it'll be easier for you to not try to stuff them down. So, what is coaching? What is coaching? I guess I kind of gave it away already. I shouldn't have showed this slide. But I still want to hear what you like. How would you describe coaching? So you've got two words here, those of you that are looking at the slides, of what I think coaching is and what it's not. But how would you describe the act of coaching? So I want you to type in the chat box here and I'll read a few of them. How would you describe coaching? So if somebody that doesn't know what coaching is and genuinely wanted to ask you, what is coaching? How would you describe that? Or another way to think about it, and you can answer from either angle, is what do you believe coaching is after having experienced it? Whether you've experienced one-on-one coaching or you've become a coach or you've experienced, a form of coaching at a live event or whatever. What do you believe coaching is? So go ahead and type in some of your responses here. And Angela asked a little bit ago, is there going to be a test at the end? Yes, there will be an assessment at the end. The assessment is not created because it's going to depend on, what comes out of the course. It won't be, I mean, it won't be the bar exam, but it also needs to show your proficiency on some level, right? So the answer is yes. I don't know the exact form. I'm sure it'll be a little bit of open-ended questions and a little bit of multiple choice and a little bit of, like you have to have watched the episodes in order to be able to answer this question, etc. And if anybody doesn't want to get the certification, then, don't take the test. But we will offer a certification if you demonstrate proficiency. Okay, so what is coaching? Let's see. Laura says helping people uncover the answers they already know. Heidi, a sacred exchange. She says, you said it best a few weeks ago, a sacred exchange. Yeah, I've been playing with that phrase. That's actually very recent for me. That might have been the first time I said that, what you're referring to, but I love that. Coaching is illuminating the right questions, not offering up the answers. I love that too, Kamari. Julia says, coaching is an intimate relationship that helps someone get to a level they would not be able to get to on their own in a given amount of time. Love that. Dana, helping others find their truth. Oh, I love those 5 words. Like there's so much in there and it's so simple. That's what I love about your phrase. Not that anybody else's phrase is any less powerful, but I personally love this phrase because it's short and it's fundamental and it's easy. And anything that's easy like that, it provides a powerful reminder for us. And it kind of, shocks us back into this simplistic understanding. Like I was doing coaching with a woman today on the phone, and she wanted to, she said, I want you to help me I want you to help me create a self-care package. Meaning that when I go into turbulence, like emotional turbulence in my marriage, how can I take care of myself and how can I get to what used to take me 2 weeks to get through? How can I get through it in 2 minutes? And I thought, that's cool. First of all, I like the specificity in that request, right? How can I get over my husband in 2 minutes instead of 2 weeks like it used to like it used to necessitate? And we had a really interesting discussion. We broke it down, like what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And ultimately, there were several components to this, and I'm not going to explain them all right now because we'll get to it in the course. But the last component, I said, we need some kind of reminder, some kind of affirmation for yourself. And with no hesitation, she just said, I'm good. And I loved it because of the simplicity and the elementary nature of it. I'm good. So anyway, Dana, I love yours. Hamza says, coaching is creating a space of reflection and discovery for another individual, helping facilitate discovery of one's true self and uncover blind spots that may hinder one from experiencing a fulfilled and empowered life. I love that equally as well, Hamza. It's just a different version, right? That's a little bit more of the intellectual, and that's great. I'm not putting any negative judgment on that whatsoever because I freaking love that. I love both of those. And that's the balance, right? 5 words, elementary, boom. This is a little bit more esoteric, a little bit more like, creation kind of words. And that's equally as awesome. Angela says, helping someone through their personal and professional goals, giving them awareness of what's holding them back, helping them clear is in all capitals, on what they want. Maybe it's get clear on what they want and helping them get in alignment with how to get it. I love that. Laura, helping people peel away the layers they've accumulated through the years to get back to their true self. Childlike wonder, dreams, sky's the limit. Yes, I totally agree. Asking the right questions. This is Nicole. To bring to light the unseen. Oh, I like that one too. Helping another to see what they can't see and grow from there. Fantastic. We can never see what's in our own blind spots. Manu says, coaching is a thinking exploration partnership. I love that too. Yola says, are we supposed to do our communication here, Sean? Yes. Like answering your questions. Yes. Right where you just typed that in, Yola, that's where people are answering these questions. Michelle, supporting people to uncover their own answers. Absolutely. Marjorie, coaching is helping the client to identify limitations and issues to shift their lives into a desired result. I'm loving these questions or these responses. Coaching, and what I love about them is they're all distinct, which is cool. They're distinct in their angle or the essence or the words. They're really, really cool. Tandy, coaching is the art of asking questions to uncover their greatness, their true north. Yes. Sneha says, helping people ask the right questions. Now, you actually put a question mark on that as though that was a question, and I would affirm that. Absolutely, Sneha. Helping others to step in their full power, says B. Yes. Supporting others as they come home to who they really are. Michelle, come home. That's awesome. I love that. Karen, helping others find their gifts. Yes, totally. 100%. Yola, coaching is reframing from inside out. Yeah, I like that too. Sneha, I always thought it was about showing the right path, but that is commanding, isn't it? I'm going to get to that. Last one here. I do not like how I cannot. Oh, yeah. This is just a comment. I don't like how I cannot see the other comments. And yeah, that's one of the challenges for this particular program. So you asked why we didn't use another platform. We use this platform for different reasons, and it was just a trade-off. And unfortunately, that was one of the trade-offs there. And that's why I said, I would love for you all to share the comments on the Facebook page. But I totally hear you, and it is one of the issues here. So I apologize about that technical restriction of not being able to see all the other comments. But what we can do is we can either type these up. If you guys want to see all of these in a post or in a document, I can have one of my team members type all these up and actually put them out there. So I just want to speak to these a little bit. You guys pretty much handled it all. What I was going to say, coaching is more about, how would I explain coaching in this moment? I would explain coaching as holding space for another person while they untie their own knots. And now, had I not read some of these things, I would have said some of the exact same things you guys already said. But since they were already said, I just came up with another analogy. But coaching is really about facilitating and exploring with curiosity and allowing somebody else to solve their own problems, if you will. I just said untie their knots. I usually don't like to even use the word problems because I don't think we should fundamentally believe that anybody has a problem. I'd rather believe that they just have a knot or that they have a conflict. They have something that doesn't have a negative connotation to it. So that's the best coaching. And there's many, many reasons for that. And we'll get into other reasons for that as we continue to go through the course. But telling people your answers to their conflicts is usually not the right thing to do for a couple reasons. Number one, it's hard. It's hard to solve other people's problems because now you have to use your problem-solving mechanism while paying attention to what they're saying and guessing on some of the things in between the words that they're saying and hoping that what you're going to say is going to land. And in the creation of the solution, sometimes there's doubt, sometimes there's uncertainty, sometimes there's emotional withhold on your part because you don't want to give them an answer that they don't take. And a lot of times that will actually cause coaches to not give any advice, right? Because they don't want it to be wrong or they don't want the judgment or whatever. I mean, listen, just because we're coaches doesn't mean we're not human still. So we still bring a lot of our negative beliefs and patterns into the coaching experience as well. And that's totally fine. I actually think it helps you if you use them properly. So it's more difficult. You're going to use a lot more of your mental and emotional resources trying to come up with solutions for other people's internal conflicts. Now, there are how-to coaches. How do I put up a website? How do I do Facebook ads? How do I sell real estate? How do I do this? And that is an equally valid form of coaching. And in those environments, people are seeking the path to doing something. And so that's more of an intellectual exchange. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that neurotransformational coaching, we just go a little bit deeper, right? And so what I want is to teach you the tools and the awarenesses and the concepts and give you the skills and the confidence and the competence to do the deepest work possible. And if you don't want to go that deep, then play at whatever level you want to play at. But if I can teach you how to go 20 levels deep into the human soul, and you don't want to do that, you just want to play at 5 levels deep, great, then do that. And knowing what has to happen at the 20 level depth will actually help you do your coaching at the 5th level depth even better, right? So you can always scale it back up. You don't have to do the deeper work. I'm going to share with you all that stuff. You don't have to necessarily do it all. So there is a form of coaching that is a little bit more, this is how you do it. Let me illuminate the path for you. Let me teach you the how to. With the transformational stuff, with helping people uncover or untie their own internal knots, to use my analogy, that's when you don't want to give them solutions, because you might miss the target. And just because you and I are both human beings, if you're grieving over the loss of your dad and I know that I grieved over the loss of my dad, what you need in your moment of grief might not be the same thing that I needed in my moment of grief. So one of the worst things you can do as a coach, I want to give you a phrase that I never want you to say ever. I don't want you to say this to any human being that is also walking on the planet at the same time as you. But I definitely never want you to say this as a coach. Don't ever. I want you to write these words down and then cross them out and remove the phrase from your vocabulary. Don't ever disrespect people with this phrase. I know how you feel. No, you don't. I don't care if our circumstances are as identical as possible. You don't know how I feel. Because how I feel is a function of my past, not your past. It's a function of all the things that make me individual and unique. It's not a function of the circumstances. So just because you've also lost your job doesn't mean you know what I feel like when I lost my job. Because for me, it might be tied to survival. For me, it might be tied to the love that I never got from my mom. For me, it might be tied to winning. And for you, it might be tied to having extra money to, to put toward a hobby. You don't know. We don't know. Our definitions of our conditions are so unique that you never know how somebody feels. And when you tell somebody, I know how you feel, it usually is followed by, let me solve your problem for you. You wouldn't actually say those words, but I know how you feel. Here's what you need. I know how you feel. Here's what you should do. I know how you feel. Why don't you do this? That's one of the most disrespectful things you can say to people, because I know how you feel sounds like disregard. It sounds like your feelings aren't all that valuable and special, because I've had them too. It sounds like get over it. It sounds like you're so unimportant in this moment that I'm now going to take over the conversation and give you my solution to your insignificant problems, because I've already handled this before. Now, I know you are not ever going to intend for those things to be communicated, but that's how it's received a lot of times, especially when somebody is in emotional turmoil. So it's actually one of the most uncompassionate things you can say to somebody. I know how you feel. What's better to say to them is, I don't know how you feel. Now you can say, I know when I lost my dad to pancreatic cancer, it brought all of this up in me, but I'm not going to say that I know how you feel. Just because you lost your dad also at the age of 67, also to pancreatic cancer, also in a hospital bed in your living room, also with the final conversation, also holding his hand, also this and also that, doesn't mean we processed it the same. Doesn't matter how identical the details are. So coaching requires you to believe that every single person is completely unique. In every way, they are unique. And if they are unique, then a prior solution might not fit in this particular problem. Now, I don't mean to say that you're not going to use your experiences that you've learned in your, in your own personal journey and in your coaching journey, I'm not going to say that you're not going to use those experiences. So there might be times when you're coaching somebody around grief, let's say, and I might be the coach in this situation. I might say something like, what I've learned from a lot of my clients is that they're holding on to grief because there's an unanswered question. So do you think there might be an unanswered question that we need to explore here for you? But see, they get to say no. If I were to say, you have an unanswered question, what is it? Then I'm commanding them to search for the unanswered question that may or may not be there. Now, even if I am positive, and I would stake my life on the fact that there's an unanswered question, you still shouldn't position it that way, because anything that you put on somebody, they can reject. Anything that they say is gospel. That's why I loved Dana. I don't have it in front of me anymore, but I think it was to find their truth. Anything that they say is their truth. Anything that you say is your truth. And so they're not going to remember it as much if it comes out of your mouth. They will remember it if it comes out of their mouth. And what comes out of their mouth might be something that you could have never in 100 years come up with. But that's the thing that they needed, because it has emotional meaning and it actually has physical meaning to them. And I'll get into that in a little bit. It has physical and emotional meaning to them. So coaching is more of a facilitating process. And here's the cool thing. So not only is it more powerful to ask questions, it's easier to ask questions. All you got to do is turn into a 3-year-old. A 3-year-old with advanced intellectual knowledge is the best coach. A 3-year-old's curiosity coupled with highly intelligent knowledge. But the highly intelligent knowledge doesn't come out in the language. What comes out in the language is why? 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 Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit and having a little bit of fun with this, but curiosity based on intelligence is the best way to coach people. So you can have your intelligence, but your intelligence is best used to ask better questions. Your intelligence is not best used to solve problems as a coach. Now, that's not easy all the time, because we have been programmed in society to feel smart when we answer questions, because if we have the solution, then we have the intelligence, then people should look up to us. And a lot of times it's celebrated, right? When people know all the answers. When people know all the answers, they get A's in school, they get scholarships to colleges, they get better jobs. So society rewards intelligence, which means when you can answer somebody's problem, there will be, or somebody's question, there will be a neurological temptation to blurt out the answer. But if you really care for your client, you will swallow that ego-driven temptation to show them how smart you are in that moment, and you will instead guide them to say the same thing you were going to say. That's coaching mastery. Because sometimes we know the answer. A poor coach is an answering machine. A great coach is a questioning machine. Even when they know the answers, they guide the client to say the words from their mouths, which you were going to say from your mouth. That's coaching. That's transformational coaching. When we're dealing with people's internal conflicts, that's how we have to show up. And here's what I promise. It's so much easier. It's 10 times more effective and so much easier. So let me answer a couple questions here. Or at least I see one. Yeah, I love this. Heidi says, I want to scuba dive in my coaching. That's great. So Angela asks, don't people not want to feel like they are suffering alone? So Angela, can you explain that a little bit? Actually, if you're in a place where you can talk, I'm going to unmute you. Let me find you on here. Okay, so I'm going to unmute you. So, Angela, you are now unmuted. Are you talkable?
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So tell me, just explain that. Just with one or two more sentences. You don't have to go, long backstory. But where are you going with that? Like, they want to feel like they're not suffering alone. And what was that
Yeah,
referring to? Because I don't know when you said that.
yeah, no problem. Okay, so you had said never say I know how you feel, and you had said that sometimes that makes people feel like oh, like what they're feeling is not unique, or what they're like you're maybe discounting what they're
Yes.
feeling. But I have said that to people before, and I thought that it was coming from a really empathetic place of like, oh my
Right.
gosh, you're not going through this alone. And like, don't you kind of want to give people the sense of like, no, it's you're not at all unique for feeling that way. Like what you're feeling is totally natural and normal. So you shouldn't put so much seriousness and weight to it. That's
Oh,
kind of what I was going for.
uh, I freaking love this stuff. I'm like walking around. I wish I wasn't tethered to my computer with my headset, but I'm walking around because this stuff gets me fired up.
Cool.
Yes, everything you said, and I'm going to unmute you here if you want to talk. Okay, great. I saw you muted yourself. Um, everything you said, I agree with, and I don't remember the words that you just said, but I'm just going to make them up. So what I heard you say is, I tell people I know how you feel so that they know that they're not alone, and so that they know that I will be there for them, and so that they know that they have support. Where here's the thing, you can just skip the I know how you feel part and just tell them what you want to know, because all those other things are absolutely powerful. But you don't have to say I know how you feel. You can just say I'm here for you. You're not alone. You have support. I'll do whatever you want. It depends on the relationship. Could be a friend of yours, or could be a coaching relationship, whatever. But you don't have to say I know how you feel, because here's the thing: once we really get a handle on the potential triggers that the human mind has, what we want to do as leaders, because as coaches we're leaders, we are influential leaders. Now, we're not dragging people. We're more helping them from the side, right? I remember in teaching, I always remember this phrase: it's better to be a guide on the side than a sage from the stage. I learned that when I was getting my teaching credential, and I don't even know how it applies. It was conceptually, obviously, but I guess it was like, it was this concept, and how do you get people to learn? So it's better to guide from the side than to be the sage from the stage. And so I don't even know why did I think of that? We were talking about like what it is that you want them to get, right? So you can let them know that there's support. You can let them know that you are here for them. You can let them know that they are not alone. Oh, I know where I was going. When you understand the human brain and you understand the triggers that we have, what we want to do as influential leaders in all forms, not just in the coaching environment, but in all forms, we want to remove as many potential triggers as we possibly can, because they are not necessary. I'll give you a for instance. We'll get into this when we get into language, but I'll give it to you now. The phrase "you have to" is a potential negative trigger for people. It might trigger them feeling restricted. It might trigger something that their parents used to say or do to them. And it's not a required phrase in the human language. So, can you tell certain people you have to have a conversation with your dad and they won't get triggered? Yes. But you can also say to some people, you have to have a conversation with their dad, and they will get triggered and they won't do it simply because you told them they have to do it. So it's better to not trigger the people that might get triggered. I teach speaking from stage. And one of the things I teach speakers, never point into your audience. Why? Because you might accidentally, unknowingly point to somebody that gets triggered. Maybe they had a gun pulled on them at some point in time in their life. Maybe their dad, in a real negative way, used to point at them all the time and say, you're never going to amount to anything. You don't know what triggers are in your audience, so don't point at them. Now, some people go, well, come on, man, that's crazy. Now, most people are not, don't have those triggers. I don't care if most people don't. There might be one. And so just don't point at them. You don't have to point in an audience. There are other ways to get your point across. Point above them. Point to the side. Point to yourself. Don't even point. Open hand, right? Like, there are certain triggers, whether they are physical, like in that case, speaking, or verbal, that we just don't need. And I want you to stop using the ones that could potentially trigger people. So that phrase is one of them. I know how you feel. You don't have to say it. It's actually better to say, I don't know how you feel. Because if you don't know how I feel, then that means I'm special. And people want to feel special. Even though it's coming from a place of compassion. And even though if you told 10 people, I know how you feel, and 9 of them wouldn't react negatively to it, 1 would. And so I'd rather you not say it to anybody and not have anybody react negatively to it. So that's what coaching is, in my opinion. And what coaching is not is giving the answers, giving commands, telling people what they need to do. Any form of disempowerment, any form of disregarding their sacredness, that's a word I've been using in many different applications over the last probably year and a half. And somebody even mentioned their definition of coaching was a sacred exchange. Anything that disregards or potentially denies the sacredness of this other human being is not okay. And it will hurt you. It will hurt you as a coach, and it's harder. And it's harder. So I suggest you do the thing that's easier and the thing that's more effective, because I promise you, you'll be a better coach that way. George says, we seem to be giving all the answers. Are you being a coach? Part of it, yeah, George, absolutely. Like, part of this is I want to see what comes up from you, right? Because what I could have done is I could have said, here's what coaching is and giving you the definition, but then that wouldn't have sparked any of the discussion, and that wouldn't have sparked you coming up with what you think coaching is. And then hearing what my opinion is, and my opinion is only my opinion, so I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's my opinion based on all of my experience. Obviously, I'm very passionate about some of these opinions, and you can tell by the way I present them. But it wouldn't have sparked what it has sparked in a lot of people if I just give you that information. And somebody, Sneha, says this one slide is so powerful. So thank you for that, Sneha. There's 2 words and 2 icons on it, right? But the discussion is what's so powerful. I want to read this one. Somebody said, I was going through a horrible event, and someone who I care so much told me that you are not alone. This is normal. I totally agree. These are the things that we normally say, right? And some of them don't land well. I remember this feeling like a punch in my gut. It hurt our relationship because at that moment, I wasn't able to see her genuineness, but only my pain. Interesting. So here, I don't want to unpack that particular situation anymore. We can do that at another time maybe. But the point of all of this is, in your communication, communicate what you want people to know as cleanly and as clearly as possible. Don't say one thing but mean another thing, and don't take risks when people's emotional triggers are involved. It's actually easier to not take risks. Now, here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to be freaking out right now going, oh my God, I'm not sure what I can say and what I can't say. I don't know what's going to potentially trigger people. Can you give me the 1,000 list, the 1,000 phrase list of the things not to say anymore? No, I won't do any of that. I don't have that. And awareness is what's important here, not a memorization of the things that you can and can't say. And we're dealing with human beings. So there are things that you can say in certain situations and things that you can't say in other situations. What I want you to trust is your connection. When we get into building rapport and sensory acuity, I'm going to give you some actual skills and some things that you can do to tap into other people's awarenesses and to know what they need you to say and what they can't afford you to say emotionally. You'll be able to know some of that stuff. And with one client, you can say the exact same thing you cannot say to another client, word for word, because the clients are different, right? So I don't want you to, I don't ever want you to think that there are rules to coaching. There are no rules, there are only laws. There are laws of human behavior. When you understand the laws, you can form your own quote unquote rules individually, and all rules only have a shelf life of one person. So I'm in front of a person right now. I'm making this up. This is just an example. So let's say I'm in front of a client right now, and she's dealing with a very traumatic childhood, painful experience. I know that she wasn't loved, right? So I want to somehow get her to love herself. And because I have that law that she's seeking externally what she's not giving herself internally, I might have her stand up and hug herself until she feels complete. And she might start hugging herself. You might be watching me do this with somebody, let's say. Let's say you come to our live event. There's a shameless plug. And you might be watching me do this with somebody. And this woman stands up, hugs herself, closes her eyes, starts bawling like a baby, and then has this major breakthrough. And then you think, oh, when somebody doesn't feel loved as a child, I got to get them to stand up and hug themselves and cry. No, not necessarily. That's what she needed in that moment, and that's what she did. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what you got to do, right? The law is we seek externally that which we don't give ourselves internally. Okay, if you know the law, how can you apply that law right now in front of this unique, sacred human being? That's the concept here. And so I don't want you to get freaked out about what you're saying and what you're not saying. And, don't be super self-conscious and rethinking your entire vocabulary. I don't want you to do that. And there will be times when you step on people's toes. I used to use the word handicap all the time in a totally insensitive way, and I just didn't know. I told people, I was doing a marketing seminar one time, online webinar, and I said, listen, if you don't have, I don't know what it was, I'll just make something up right now, but I said something like, if you don't have certainty in your business, you are severely handicapping your success. And I've said a version of that 100 times, if not more. You're severely handicapping your, you know what I said? I didn't say handicap, I said cripple. I said, you are crippling your business. Oh, I remember that now. Because a woman who I love and adore, who I know her situation. I know she was on the line. I've known her for years. Emailed me and said, I suggest you don't use the word cripple because that just makes me feel bad. Now, this particular lady has muscular dystrophy MS, something sclerosis. Sorry, I'm totally insensitively butchering the title of this disease. So she has MS, and she's in and out of wheelchairs. And it hurt my heart to hear her call me on that. And then I realized how many times I've used the word cripple in a totally insensitive way so often. So since that time until right now, I'm using it as an example. Since that time, I've not used the word cripple or handicap in a way to say restriction. I've just used the word restriction. You're severely restricting your business gets the same effect as you're crippling your business without the potential harmful trigger. So I say that to say I'm aware of this stuff. I've taught this stuff, and I offended it a year ago, right? So this is going to be a work in progress. I just want you to have awareness on this, and I want you to have fun with this stuff. I don't want you to take anything that we talk about in this course with stress or negativity or anxiety or any of that. Have fun with this stuff. If you become so ferociously curious about human patterns and human behavior and why people say certain things and how they turn their head this way and how they break eye contact when they're talking about certain things in their life, you're going to be so freaking fascinated with the human species. It's crazy. And the more fascinated you are with the human species and the behavior patterns that we have, the better coach you're going to be. Promise you. All right, next concept here. So we talked about what is coaching. What is transformational coaching? Transformational coaching is doing the internal work, basically, right? Many of you have seen either that particular image or a similar image of an iceberg, where the majority of the iceberg is underwater. The iceberg is used commonly as an analogy for the human brain, where the majority of the human brain's power is unconscious. It's underwater, it can't be seen. We're not aware of it. The small amount that's above the water is what we are conscious to. But our unconscious mind is operating, or at least it's in control of, I've heard anywhere between like 85 and 95% of our behavior is a function of the unconscious mind. It's not the conscious mind. The conscious mind creates willpower. The conscious mind creates motivation. The conscious mind creates strategies. The conscious mind solves problems. But you can have the most amazing, conscious, intellectual, intelligent mind that can create all these strategies and solve all these problems, and yet it only accounts for 5% of your behavior. Because under the surface is what's actually determining your results. Transformational coaching is going below the surface. It's scuba diving, like Heidi said. I love that, Heidi. I think I'm going to use that analogy. I love it. It's like, because you know what? You got to be prepared. You just can't scuba dive with no suit. You just can't go down with no air, right? You got to make sure that you're airtight. So there's a preparation that's required for you to go to the depths. And when you go to the depths in the scuba diving analogy, you'll see things that were previously unseeable. You'll see fish that don't go to the surface. You'll see plants and different forms of life that you can't see unless you go down there. In human behavior, you can influence and manipulate and sometimes massage and sometimes pull out things that you can't get to from the surface if you're willing to dive deep. That's transformational coaching. In another session, I'm going to tell you what transformation actually is. I can't do it now because it would just take too long. So, and when I tell you what transformation actually is, what the word means, I think it'll blow your mind because it's totally fundamentally changed the way I live basically over the last 2.5 weeks. And anyway, several of you already know the story, but when you understand what transformation actually is, it's making foundational shifts in people. It's not making behavior shifts from outside in. It's making foundational shifts that then influence new behavior from inside out. It's not clipping the weeds above the surface. It's uprooting them and planting new seeds in the soil. Those seeds will develop into different life forms above ground. But if all you do is clip the weeds or cover up the weeds, you haven't changed anything. You've only covered them up. And that's what most people are doing on the planet, is they're coping with their behavioral protective mechanisms. They're coping with their sabotaging patterns. They're coping with the symptoms instead of clearing the problem. Transformational coaching is helping people clear the conflicts below the surface instead of constantly and continuously wrestling with the symptoms on the surface. Transformational coaching doesn't put a band-aid on the skin and hope it treats cancer. It goes after the cancer and removes the cells. That's what transformational coaching means conceptually. So there are many, many, many conversations to this. On this particular slide, everything above the water is visible. Usually that is behavior. Now, there's many different elements of behavior. There's the words that come out of your mouth. There's the things that you do. There's the patterns, etc. But those things above the surface are what's visible. And since most of us don't like what's visible in certain areas of our life, we go after what's visible. But that's not the way to change it. I want you to imagine a movie projector. A movie projector projects images onto a screen, right? Most people don't, if you don't like what's on the screen, let's say the screen is the collection of circumstances in your life. If you don't like what's on the screen, you can't go up to the screen and change anything. You can't go up there and try to cut certain things out of the movie on the screen. You can't go up there and write on the screen, because that's not where everything is being developed. That's not the origin. If you want to change what's on the screen, you need to change what's on the film, because the film is getting projected onto the screen. The film is below the surface. The film is everything that's not visible. So on this slide, we're talking about people's perceptions of the world, their definitions of what's right and wrong, what's good or bad, what is success, what is failure, their attitudes that they have about everything, their judgments about all the things that have ever happened to them in their lives, and their prejudices, and their just, we all kind of lean in certain ways based on our attitudes around people in general, or circumstances, or institutions, or what have you. All of those are based on, and they form or are formed by, our values. What do we think is important? Important to us individually, important to us as a society on the planet. Our beliefs, we're going to talk a lot about our beliefs. A belief is nothing more than a story plus evidence. That's all it is. A belief is not a thing. A belief is not something that you were born with. A belief is not an unchangeable truth. A belief is nothing more than a story plus evidence. One of the main things that we're going to talk about in this course, and one of the essential parts of transformational coaching, is being able to identify and shift belief systems, because it's the belief system that's the film. So if you want to change somebody's reality, don't try to change their reality, change their belief system, and their belief system will change their reality. That's good. Never put it that way. And then drivers. Drivers are the things that we are driven by, right? There are urges. We are driven toward our temptations. We are driven to act in certain situations, and we are driven to not act in other situations based on all of these things, right? So we're going to go much deeper into a lot of this. Don't think that this slide is all you're going to get when it comes to the below the surface stuff. We're going to go deep, deep, deep. And if any of you look through the manual, you'll see, like, we're going to open up some serious, serious elements of human behavior and brain functioning, filters, programs, meta programs. All these things are going to completely, hopefully, shift your understanding and awareness and ability to manipulate behavior, both yours and your clients. But that's just a visual representation of what transformational coaching is. It's going below the surface. Now, over the last couple months, I developed a term called neurotransformational coaching. And what I mean by this is not just transforming people's insides like that, but transforming their neurology. Transforming their neurology. What I've been experiencing myself and talking to a lot of people about over the last 2 weeks is the importance of the physical evidence and how it determines our unconscious commitments. What I mean by that is you take a look at, like, let's say that you have a goal, right? You have a goal to, let's just say you have a goal to make $100,000 and you've never made $100,000. Your parents didn't make $100,000. So it's a new goal for you. That goal is theory for you. It's not reality. It's theory because you don't know what it's going to be like. But let's say in order to get to that goal, you have to, you're going to choose whatever path you're going to choose. And let's say you have to speak in public. That's the path that you've chosen, whether you want to be a speaker or you want to be, somebody that just speaks in public in a different form or whatever. You've got to speak in public in order to get to your goal of $100,000. Well, that fear, if you have a fear of speaking in public, that fear is standing in between you and your goal. And that fear is like a big raging forest fire. You believe that if you jump into that fire, you're going to get emotionally burned because you have before in the past and you remember it. See, all fears are based on a real experience that we've either had personally or we've witnessed in somebody else, some kind of intimate personal experience. Usually it's what we have experienced personally. We can generate fears based on what we see happen to other people. Like we might see somebody get hit, they're jaywalking, they get hit by a car, and then we have a fear of jaywalking because we saw this really traumatic event to somebody else. But most of our fears, for most of us, are physical experiences that we had at some point in time. So maybe you stood up when you were in 3rd grade and you tried to convert a fraction into a decimal and you didn't get it right and your teacher laughed and all your students laughed at you. And that experience lodged into your neurology, it lodged into your DNA. You're carrying that around physically with you at all times. And that experience led to an overgeneralization, which first started out as being afraid of doing math problems in front of a 3rd grade class, but eventually over the course of time and new experiences and all kinds of other fears getting mixed in has manifested into a fear of speaking in public. Now, I use that as an actual real example of a woman who I was coaching her. I was coaching this woman around her fear of public speaking, and when we traced it back, that's what it was. She was trying to convert a fraction into a decimal in her in a middle school or elementary school class, and she got laughed at. And now, as a middle-aged, highly competent, drop-dead gorgeous woman, she's afraid of speaking in public. She's not afraid of speaking in public for the same reasons that other people might be afraid of speaking in public. And she's not even afraid of speaking in public. And eventually, I won't go through the whole process. We'll get into processes later on in the course that you can walk through. But eventually, I said, you don't have a fear of speaking in public, because she had an event coming up in like 2 months, and she was really anxious about it. She was afraid of giving this presentation in front of a bunch of potential investors and stuff. And eventually, we identified that. And I said, you don't have a fear of speaking in public. You have a fear of converting fractions to decimals in front of people. And I said, at your event in 2 months, are you going to convert fractions to decimals? And she goes, well, no, I'm not. And I said, okay, great. Then there's nothing to be afraid of. And she literally let go of all of this fear, and in that moment, neurologically transformed. The fear that had been living in her body went away. Now, I allowed her to keep her fear of converting fractions into decimals in front of other people because we didn't have a whole lot of time and I didn't want to try to fix that one. And I don't think that she'll ever have to actually confront that one, right? So we didn't have to change her experience. We just had to remove all the gross overgeneralization that she did, and she neurologically transformed. The fear that used to live in her shoulders wasn't there anymore. And because the physical experience changed, her thoughts toward the physical experience changed, her emotions that used to be based on the physical experience changed. When, excuse me, when she got up in front of the people and she didn't feel the butterflies the way she felt them last time, then the thoughts about I'm afraid to speak weren't there. They neurologically could not be created anymore because she was foundationally shifted in her body, in her physical DNA. That's neurotransformation. Now, I'm not saying that every single thing that people have requires a neurological transformation. It doesn't. But again, if you learn how to scuba dive, and scuba diving is not necessary in this one particular instance, well, then you can just put your snorkel gear on. Right? You might not have to do anything more than just put your face in the water and have your little snorkel thing, and you're good. You don't have to go to the depths, but I'd rather you know how to go to the depths if and when necessary. That's neurological transformation, and I call it neurotransformational coaching. It's based on neurolinguistic programming. That's where I got that's why I got all of my training in the very beginning. I've since learned from a bunch of different people. So my program is highly based on NLP, but it's not a traditional NLP program. There are many, many exercises that I got outside of NLP and many, many NLP concepts and exercises that I don't teach because I don't use them. I don't find them relevant to coaching. So this is my version of neurotransformational coaching. NLP is one of the main ingredients in it. And I would say the main concept of NLP is that second bullet. The map is not the territory. What that means is our experience of life is not actually what life has to experience, but rather how we perceive it to be. So if you look at a map, the territory that we experience, whether it's bumpy, whether it's hot, whether it's cool, whether it's difficult to navigate or easy, that's not a function of the map itself. That's a function of how we are operating in the map or on the map. So life's experiences are a function of our internal programming. It's not a function of life actually itself. That's why you have people who voted for Trump and people who voted for Hillary and people who didn't vote. That's why you have people who hate cops and people who absolutely love cops. That's why you have people who totally believe in one thing and their next door neighbor or the person sitting across from them at the dinner table that's related to them completely believe in the exact opposite thing. It's because the thing itself doesn't determine the experience of the thing. The experience of the thing is determined by how we as human beings are operating. That's the territory. It's not the actual map. That's why two people can look at the same thing. One calls it blue, one calls it red. Two people can look at the same thing. One calls it right, one calls it wrong. And when we really understand that, what it will lead to is more compassion. Because you will no longer get into discussions about right and wrong the way other people get into discussions about right and wrong, the way countries kill each other over discussions about right and wrong. You'll no longer do that. You'll just be fascinated by what your right looks like compared to my right. Because according to all of my layers and all of my lenses and all of my values and all of my perceptions and all of my attitudes and all of my beliefs, my perception is right. And according to all of your layers and lenses and attitudes and perceptions and beliefs and values, your perception is also right. They're just two different angles of right. And I believe that to be a masterful transformational coach, we have to attack and let go of as many of our judgments about right and wrong and good and bad as we possibly can in order to be a more influential coach, in order to be a more persuasive leader, in order to live a happier life and help other people do the same. We got to let go of some of these judgments that do nothing but create divide, divisiveness, unhappiness, discontent, misery. Misery is created by our judgments. It's not created by the circumstances most of the time. So instead of us trying to change the circumstances, how about we change our perception of the circumstances, and then it can shift our experience of the circumstances. I think it was Wayne Dyer that said something like, I don't know the exact quote, something like, instead of trying to make the world change the way you look at the world, and then it'll feel like the world has changed. Something like that. Even if other people or other circumstances don't actually change, your experience of them can change by shifting your own filters, your own internal realities, your attitudes, your judgments, your beliefs, your opinions. And that's why this is so awesome and amazing, is that there's no human experience that I've ever come across that can't be fundamentally shifted and altered for the better by doing this internal work. And it doesn't matter what they've been through. It doesn't matter what they're currently going through. I've never seen a human being that wants to change not be able to change by doing this kind of work. That's why I personally love NLP so much. That's why I teach it, because it fundamentally changed my life. And I just want to share that experience with a lot of other people. Internal representation, that's something that we'll go into in a different module, but it's basically how we learn and how we represent the world. There are 5 main sensory inputs. You guys are all familiar with these: our eyes, our ears, our body, our physical or intuitional feelings. That's the internal, and the kinesthetic. Olfactory is either taste or smell, and gustatory is the other one. I don't know which ones those are. But those are our 5 senses, right? What you see, what you smell, what you taste, what you feel, and what you hear. That's how we experience the world. We sense our external surroundings, and then it goes internal. We create the meanings around all of it, and then that's how our experiences are actually developed, right? So we're going to dive into all of these things in this module. I just wanted to kind of give you an introduction, a little bit of philosophical discussion as we got into, and we're going to dive deeper, unpack a lot of these things. Trust me, those of you that are intellectual, just wait. NLP is actually usually taught from a highly intellectual place. Now, I've done my best to translate some of that stuff that's, scientifically taught into more gentle language, if you will, that's easier to understand emotionally, not just intellectually. But for those of you that are more intuitive by nature, you're more creative, you're more heart-centered, then you're going to experience all of that in your primary learning modes as well, right? And I don't say this to try to toot my own horn, or I don't say this out of ego, but I learned NLP from the Tony Robbins-esque, like, masculine energy. Change your state, rah, do it this way. And that's who I was back then. That's how I was operating back then. And I don't have a negative judgment around it. It's just that's one end of the spectrum. That's how I learned it. And then I spent the next 8 years of my professional growth with Jack Canfield, who fundamentally just wants the planet to love itself, right? He teaches self-love. That's the thing that he's best at. That's the thing he's most passionate about. And he is the opposite end of the spectrum from the masculine Tony Robbins kind of T. Harv Eker sort of energy. Again, no negative judgment whatsoever about any of those. I've just experienced both ends of that spectrum. So I have more of I would say, like a heart-centered essence of the intellectual nature of neuro-linguistic programming. So the good news is no matter how you are oriented, you're going to get both of them, right? Now, I want to go through these relatively quick because I've already talked about some of them on positive, and we're going to dive deeper into them in the coming modules. But I want to tell you 12 tenets that I have, that these are just my experiences of transformational coaching. And these are in no sequential order whatsoever. It's all about forward momentum. Our goal is forward momentum. Never poo-poo progress. If somebody makes progress, don't disregard it. Never poo-poo progress. Even if you know that the book that you want them to read, this is figuratively speaking, the book that you want them to read has 12 chapters, and in this one coaching session, you just got them halfway through chapter 1. Don't hold on to their experience as though they're 11 and a half chapters away from doing it right. Hold on to their experiences. They just went a half a chapter further than where they were at the beginning of the call. Progress is celebrated. Never poo-poo progress. And that's one of the things we have to stay on our clients about all the time, because we are programmed in our society to poo-poo progress if it doesn't produce the results that we want. Progress is success. Keep people at choice as much as you possibly can. Have them choose everything about everything whenever possible. That's why I was saying you can skillfully ask questions to have the client say the things that you would have said. And therefore, they are choosing those answers on their own. Whenever you give clients options, position it as an option. I'll give you this example. Let's just say that I believe as much as I can possibly believe that I'm coaching a client, and I believe that her solution is she needs to write a total truth letter to her dad. Instead of me saying, you need to write a total truth letter to her dad, and instead of me trying to get her to say that when she might not know what a total truth letter is, I might put it on a buffet for her. I might say, in this situation, when I've experienced women that are in this situation, I've found that there are one of 3 things that they generally need to do. Number 1, they need to move out of the house. Or number 2, they need to write a total truth letter to their dad and get all their feelings out on paper. Or number 3, they need to, I'm just going to make something up ridiculous, but they need a prescription for drugs. Now, I would never, the way I just positioned that was stupid, because those are crazy. Let's just pretend that I had said, like, okay, let me give you better choices, because it's like, of course, you know which one we're going for, right? Let's say choice number 1 is to meditate. Choice number 2 is to write a total truth letter to her dad. Choice number 3 is to do the mirror exercise, where she gives positive affirmations to herself in the mirror. And then I'll say, out of those 3, what do you think would probably be best for you to do? I'll tell you 9 times out of 10, the thing that I think they should do is the one that they pick. And if it's the one they pick, it'll be the one they commit to more. It'll be the right answer because it came out of their mouth. If it's something that I give to them, there will be less commitment to it. They might not ever do it, or they might not commit to it the way they would have if they came up with it. And the 1 time out of 10 that they pick something else, that's the right answer. Because I know that they will commit to the thing that they chose more than to the quote unquote right thing that I gave them. So at all times, whenever possible, keep clients at choice when it comes to their own discoveries, and also keep them at choice means we have 100% responsibility for the way that we operate on the planet. So take responsibility for your life. Don't leave it up to somebody else to fix your life. Take responsibility that you are not a victim and that you can change whatever it is that you want to change. So that's what at choice means. Another tenet that I believe in, focus on action and controllable activities. We have a lot of clients in the sales world, and they try to make X number of sales every day. And a lot of them have these goals called, I want to make 5 bookings or I want to make 5 sales. Well, one of the things that we have to teach them all the time is you don't control whether somebody buys or not. So I'd rather you have a goal of making 25 phone calls that you control. And then if you make the 25 phone calls, whether you get the 5 sales or not, you did what you could do. And then if 25 phone calls is not yielding 5 sales on average, well, then we need to make more phone calls. But don't stake your success and judgment of yourself on things that you don't control 100%. That's dangerous, and you won't want to commit to those things. The fourth one I call person versus performance. In leadership, this is really big. A lot of people will focus on the performance, right? And this is a gigantic problem in our society. Our society basically has taught us that our self-value, our worth as a person, is equal to our accomplishments. And that's such crap. It's such crap. Who you are as a person, your value on this planet as a human being has nothing to do with what you accomplish. And if you accomplish more, it doesn't increase your value as a human being. And if you accomplish less, it doesn't decrease your value as a human being. But when our personal self-worth is matched, mirrored, and married to, connected to, attached to our performance, then we will almost always be afraid of taking risks, because if we don't perform, then we'll feel worse about ourselves as a person. And the highest performers that do it in a healthy way have detached who they are as a person and what they create as a performer. And what I know is that when you have a detachment, a healthy detachment between who you are and what you do, it'll be easier to do what you do. It'll be easier to be more successful in your doingness when you know that your beingness is not at risk in your value. So that's another concept and principle that we work on all the time. Next bullet says implementation and measurement. This is testing and tweaking, right? We're going to implement whatever it is that we're going to implement in our coaching. You know, we ask people to do an exercise and we do this and that. And then we're going to measure, does it work or not? And if it doesn't work, then we got to implement something different. So it's all just like this constant testing and tweaking kind of action going on, right? Without attaching a whole lot of meaning to the things that don't stick or the things that don't work. You just add a different ingredient and you're always staying in motion that way. And it's a more neutral way to look at human behavior and development. Presence and connection, we're going to dive so deep into that, but those are two of the most important things as a coach, is to stay present, help other people maintain connection with their presence and connection with other people, connection with their higher source, connection with their body. So these are deep, deep elements we're going to play with all the time. Intangible versus tangible is a theme that shows up everywhere. Intangible are the things that you can measure. Intangible are the things you cannot measure. It's usually sort of the language of the heart. Tangible is the things that you can measure. That's usually the language of the head. Neither one is right or wrong. We just have to be able to distinguish and use them both properly. Always leave the client on a high note, no matter how it ends on the call, no matter how little progress you made or how much progress you made or how incomplete you might feel. You've got to leave people on a high note. And one of the best ways to do that is to say, are you complete for now? I'm giving you all of these tenets just at a high level. Trust me, we're going to dive into them. You're going to get examples of them much more in the course. I'm just kind of running through this. I know we're at the 2-hour mark, so I want to run through this. The goal of coaching, I think, is independence. Not to create dependency on you or dependency on anybody else. The goal should be independence. How can people self-coach, become self-aware, and help them fix their own stuff, right? When they're out there walking in the world, help them think on their feet, etc. We always focus on actions and outcomes. That's similar to the things that we can versus the things that we cannot control. If the actions that you are taking are not producing the outcomes that you're wanting, then change the actions. You don't have to beat yourself up. It doesn't have to be any more emotional than that. The next bullet here is be ferociously curious. We've already dived into that multiple times in many different ways. And then the final bullet here is one of the most empowering principles as a coach. Whoever has the challenge has the solution. You've got to trust in the human ability and the human spirit to solve its own problems. So you don't have to have the confidence that you, as the coach, can solve people's problems. You got to have the confidence that they, as the human being with a powerful spirit, can solve the problem. So you can borrow your confidence from their spirit. And obviously, you've got to know the right questions to ask and tools and exercise and all that kind of stuff. But from a confidence perspective, if you show up in a coaching encounter and you don't bring confidence, then that's going to poison the interaction to an extent, at least, right? So sometimes coaches get really frustrated because they don't have the confidence that they're going to be able to help people. But if you know that people can help themselves, then you can borrow your confidence from their ability to help themselves. And I can't tell you how many times that has pulled me out of a difficult situation in terms of me being, not having a whole lot of confidence of whether I can solve this person's problem. So this last piece here, I think there's two pieces, but they're going to be like 60 seconds. The Elite Coaches Creed is something I came up with, the acronym of the word elite. I love the word elite as long as it's understood in what I think is an empowering way. Elite doesn't mean I'm better than you. Elite is the highest version of me. So how do you live an elite life? It's you being the highest version of yourself in your family, in your job, as a business owner, as a partner, whatever. Elite is the highest version of you. In this case, it's the highest version of a coach. And the elite stands for empowerment, leadership, integrity, truth, and excellence. So that's just something that we created as kind of a reminder of what we are doing. And this slide is actually similar to the iceberg slide. So it's just when we take a look at what targets are we paying attention to with our clients. The above the surface stuff are the behaviors and the language. We want to really pay attention to the language they're using. And the below surface stuff, and there are many more than these, but if I could just chunk it up, the drivers that they have, the beliefs that they have, and then who are they at the core. But I would also add, and this is real new, that's why it's not even in your handout. I just put this on the slide like 5 minutes before I started, experiences. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier in the call. Our physical experiences outweigh our emotional experiences. So we're using all of those things as a neurotransformational coach to help influence people's behavior. And obviously you're going to use all of that with yourself too. So here's the little recap. We talked about coaching and what transformational coaching is, and neurotransformational coaching, and the tenets and the creed, and my targets of transformation. Module number 2, we're going to get into the essential coaching foundation. As I said earlier, I want you to continue the conversation on Facebook, please. If you have any questions that would benefit the group, ask there. If you have any personal stuff that's not really relevant to the group, then you can go ahead and email me, and I'll do whatever I can to get back to you. One thing I want to say I should have said this earlier. I was going to say this earlier, and then I went on a different tangent. I didn't say this piece. I did mention, don't get frustrated with the course. Don't get frustrated or stressed out about anything at all. One of the things that happens on all of my webinars, you can tell, is that I go long, right? And so sometimes I don't have any idea. Not every call is going to be 2 hours. Some of them might be a little bit longer than that. And that's just the way I operate, right? So I don't stay committed to a schedule as much as I stay committed to the intention. And what's interesting is that, and I'm not saying this to defend myself or anything like that. I genuinely wanted to say this earlier, and then I just forgot. some people will give us feedback and go, my God, your webinars are way too long. And some people ask us for a refund because of that. I just don't have time for an hour phone call. And then some people are like, I want it to be longer. Can we just stay on the phone longer? I mean, we only went for 2 hours that time. I did a call one time with 4 hours and 4.5 hours, and everybody that started finished, and they just wanted it to continue, right? So what I'm saying is, I don't want anything in this course, whether it's my teaching style, the how long I teach, or anything like that, to negatively affect what you are meant to get out of it. So let's say that, these calls are going to be an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer. I would rather you have access to more information and you use it whenever you want than for me to say this call is only going to be an hour, this call is only going to be an hour and 15 minutes or whatever, when somebody else in the program needed that extra discussion, right? So this happens in every program that I do. Again, I should have said this at the very beginning, but I'll say it now. Manage that irritation. Sorry about the sirens that are in the background. Manage that irritation, because I don't want it to affect what this course could mean to you. So I tell people all the time, if you only have an hour, then stop. And don't get angry don't get upset that I'm going to continue going after the hour. Just be complete for now, and you can access it at any point in time in the future. Now, having said that, I will adjust our scheduling, because I think in one area we told people that these would be 2-hour calls, and in another area we told people that they would be an hour and a half calls. So for that, I do apologize, because there was a miscommunication in 2 different areas of the scheduling, right? So the expectation that we gave to some of you was different. But, handle this course however you want to handle it, right? Like, engage when you can engage, don't engage when you can't engage, but please continue the conversation however you possibly can on social media, in Facebook. I'm here to help you in any way that I possibly can. There are no questions that are off limits. Ask me anything personally, or ask anything at all in the Facebook group. I'm not going to take live questions right now in the webinar, but what I will do is I'm going to end the webinar, and then I'm going to go into the chat box, and I'm going to individually respond to some of you. I'm not going to respond to all of you, but I will individually respond to some of you, or I might ask you to email me or whatever, so that you're not hanging on some of the questions that you may have asked, especially when I told you earlier to ask questions throughout the chat box. But I'm over here, like, I'm standing up, I'm walking around, and then I get lost, and I'm not paying attention to the chat box. So I'm not getting it as they come in. So for that, I apologize, but I'm going to stick around, answer some of the questions, and I will see you on Facebook. Module number 2 is Essential Coaching Foundation, as I said, and I can't wait to start that. So for those of you that are going to be on there live, we'll connect there. For those of you that can't make it, we'll connect via archive and replay and whatever. And hopefully you're excited about this course. Hopefully something has been said that sparked something inside of you. And, and I want you to get ready to experience whatever it is that you want to experience. And my highest intention is that every single one of you go from wherever you are to at least a little bit further in your confidence, your competence, your reality, your emotions, and in your personal life. So with that, everybody, I'm going to end this webinar. I'm going to answer the questions, as I said, for those of you that typed them in live, and I will see you on Facebook until module number 2.